Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. It was so nice of you, and I love that introduction. There's nothing better than being introduced as normal. That is like my favorite thing in a crazy environment of Washington, D.C., with a president that is decidedly not normal as far as presidents go. So thank you so much. And Mayor, congratulations on your election. I once ran unopposed for local office. It was after having a big race 4 years before, and I remember even after I found out I had no opponent, I still put up 3,000 lawn signs and did 29 parades, because, you know, there could be a write-in. You never know. And that's actually, I had an event the night that we found out I had no opponent, and everyone was cheering, and then someone in the back in a suburb of the Twin Cities yells, "There could be a write-in," seriously. So, but it is so important, and it is a tribute to you. And the work that you've done here in Rochester, and the respect that you have from people of your own party, obviously, but also others in the community as well that may not be in your own party. And I think that's really important as we look at what happened last night all over the state of New Hampshire, where 8 of the 10 mayors that won are Democrats, where Laconia, right, you had that major change in that town for the mayor's race. And then what we saw nationally, where both houses in the state of Virginia flipped Democrat. And in Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's home turf. So I think that is a good place to begin with my story and how I come into this, because we are living in a moment where I think the people of this country, and I said this today when I filed for office in New Hampshire on this beautiful day, and I got to wear my gold coat, which I love very much because it reminds me of the blizzard in Minnesota, but that didn't happen. And as I think about what's going on in our country right now, I think these are moments of patriotism for a lot of people. People who maybe didn't vote before, people who maybe don't agree with everything a candidate says, or people who are Republicans or independents. They are going to the polls in places like Kentucky and in districts all over this land, including, by the way, where I was 2 nights ago in Philadelphia in the suburbs there, where county commissioner races turned Democrat. That had never been Democrat in anyone's, like, a century, maybe forever. And what that is about, it's about patriotism and a value check on this president. It is some on his economic policies, which a lot of people realize are not going to help them when he adds more and more debt every single day, over $1 trillion from his tax bill, with an inordinate amount of it going to the people at the top of the income bracket. And they know he's not been working on things like bringing down pharmaceutical prices, but they also know at their core that he hasn't been putting our country first, that he's been putting himself first, whether it his business interests, whether it is his partisan interests, and whether it is his political interests. And that's why filing today was so timely, to be able to talk about a state which was the first state to have its own constitution. That would be your state. And the 9th state to ratify the U.S. Constitution. And the state, and this doesn't surprise me after being around here a lot, that has the biggest legislature in the country. And in fact, this is such a good segue, right? We've been joined by Mandy Merrill, who's a former state senator. Where are you, Mandy? Thank you. It means a lot to have you here. And also Rebecca Hutchinson, who's the former state rep. Where are you? Rebecca's right over there in her, oh, that looks like a Minnesota, New Hampshire outfit there with that red plaid. Thank you. And we also have Lori McCrae here, chair of the Portsmouth Democrats. Thank you for that. As well as James, where are you? Dover Democrats, right over there. Thank you. Oh, he is like branded with his Dover Democrats at Work shirt. Thank you for that. And are there other electeds that want to raise their hands and tell me? No? Right here? Yes?
Skip Berrien, state rep from Exeter.
Thank you. Thank you, Skip. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Good? All right. Feel like we're in like an AA group. Oh, right here, yes. Okay. Of course, we've met. Thank you so much for being here. So this is, so for me, one of my favorite New Hampshire stories was doing a town hall in Rye and having the guy who was moderating it come up, and I said, "Oh, so good to meet you." And he said, "Yeah, I'm the town moderator for events like this." I go, "Great, I suppose you were elected too." I'm joking, and he goes, I was elected. That was my job. But I think it is a good way to start because this is citizen democracy. This is the story that the president is not king, that democracy is king, and this is the right state to talk about that and to begin this journey that we are on. So my journey actually started a while back, and that was when I announced for president in the middle of an island, in the middle of the Mississippi River, in the middle of a blizzard, just to show Donald Trump that I had grit. And then that led him to make fun of me for talking about climate change in the middle of a snowstorm, and gave me a name which I thought would really work in New Hampshire, but he called me Snow Woman on Twitter. So I wrote back, "I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard." And that was the beginning. As I said that day, and I have been very true to myself, something your mayor has been when she was state senator and before that. And I think that's really important right now when we have a president that has told over 10,000 documented lies, that literally sent 75 tweets this weekend. That's what he did when we have fires raging in California, farm bankruptcies up 25%, no infrastructure bill through, which you're well aware of in New Hampshire. You could just go bit by bit over what he hasn't done. But this idea that we have someone in the White House that is just dividing people every day, every morning, going after immigrants, going after people of color, going after people that he doesn't agree with, is just inimical to our idea of America. And that's what I said when I announced on that island, that we need to reach a higher plane in our politics and cross the river of our divide to a better place. And the place that I announced was actually a mile from where that bridge fell down in the middle of a beautiful summer day. And the world watched what our community did that day, and they saw an off-duty firefighter tethered to the side of the river, diving in and out looking for survivors who just happened to be walking by. They saw a tasty truck driver who could have saved his life by ramming in the back of a school bus, but instead veered off and to a certain death and burned to death in his cab, but saved the school bus of kids. And they saw the school bus that was plummeting on a guardrail with 30 kids inside, that looked like it was going to go over. The back doors open. School camp counselor named Hernandez has 1 second to decide what he's going to do. And instead of jumping off that bus, he gets every kid off that bus to safety. That's what our country is about. And that's what this president's messing around with. But I, based on what happened last night, based on what you guys did in 2018, I just have a really strong feeling that America's not going to tolerate 4 more years of this guy. As long as we do not mess it up, which is where we get to me. That we do not mess this up, and that we put someone at the top of this ticket that's going to not shut people out. We never do well when that happens, but bring people with her. And by the way, if people think a woman can't beat Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi does it every single day. So I think so. So that is really what this is about as you look at this primary and you're deciding who you're going to support. And you look at my background, I'm the granddaughter of an iron ore miner. Imagine me saying that to Donald Trump. It's going to be really fun, my background, compared to his. I'm the granddaughter of an iron ore miner who worked 1,500 feet underground his whole life, never graduated from high school because he was helping to raise his 9 brothers and sisters as the oldest son. And he saved money in a coffee can in the basement with my grandma to send my dad to a 2-year community college. And from there, my dad went to the University of Minnesota. and ended up being a journalist and covered the Vikings and had a really amazing life out of that hardscrabble mining town because of his parents and because of education that was affordable. My mom grew up in Milwaukee and also grew up poor, and she ended up deciding to move to Minnesota to be a teacher, and she taught second grade until she was 70 years old. So I stand before you today in Rochester as the granddaughter of an iron ore miner, a daughter of a union teacher and a union newspaper man, as the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from the state of Minnesota, and a candidate for President of the United States. And that is our country. We come from a country of shared dreams, and this simple idea that no matter where you come from or who you know or where you worship, that you can make it in the United States of America. And that is what this guy's breaking down. And it's what we cannot tolerate any longer. So when I look at what a leader should do, I look at rising to the challenges. And instead of just what he does, which is gloating about things that he didn't even have anything to do with, like the fact that we got out of that downturn because of the resiliency of our workers and our businesses. And then he comes in and gloats about it, gloats about work that was done on local levels in every town in New Hampshire, gloats about it, instead of rising to the challenges in front of them. And you know what those challenges are. Climate change. Right in front of us. All you had to do was turn on the TV last week and see those fires. But it's actually even less dramatic than that. If you hear about the oyster fishermen off the coast of Maine, like I did when we did an event on the seacoast. Or you hear about in the Midwest, the weird weather events and the increase in storms and weird tornadoes and hail, or most significantly, the flooding. I've told some of you before of the story of this woman named Fran, who showed me her binoculars, and through those binoculars you could see her house that she had bought with her husband, where they were living with their 2 4-year-olds, and she said it was the house she wanted to retire in. And then she said the kitchen, she loved the kitchen, and she loved the way the light came in the windows in the kitchen. But she said now the whole kitchen is covered in water in a house that's been there for nearly 100 years, where there's still horsehair in the plaster. So then I said, well, Fran, where's the river? Is it right here? Because there was this rushing water right next to the house. And she said, no, that's the road. She said, the river is 2.5 miles away, and it's never come this close before. That's climate change. And that's climate change that we're seeing throughout the world. And it's why it was such a really bad example of this president, among many, when just this week he signed us out of the International Climate Change Agreement. And I can tell you that on day one, I will get us back into that agreement. On day one. You don't need Congress to get that done. And on day 2, bring back the clean power standards. Day 3, the gas mileage standards. These are all things that had been really litigated and discussed over time over the last few years, and he took us out of every single one of those things. And then, of course, getting sweeping legislation going. And your 2 senators have been leaders on this. Oh, by the way, Minnesota and New Hampshire are 2 of only a handful of states that have had the wisdom to send not 1 but 2 women to the U.S. Senate. So there you go. But, and in this area, Jeannie especially has done all this work with energy efficiency, and those bills are just ready to go. She's got, part of them have been passed into law, signed into law, but there's even more that she wants to do that could be part of a major package. I like the energy efficiency issue. My one climate change joke of the day is it's called building a bridge to the next century. No, building a fridge to the next century. There you go. Okay, so that's climate change. Matching our workforce with the jobs that are out there. And that's really how I think about education. I know there's a lot of bumper sticker ideas out there, but none of them are going to work if we don't match what our degrees are, like from the community college you have here, with what the jobs are. And I visited Manchester Community College, and there I found out there were a significant number of students that had 4-year degrees that were then there to get their 2-year degrees. That just seems a little backwards to me. That's the truth all over the country. The average is nearly 10% of kids that go get 2-year degrees have 4-year degrees already. Why is that? Well, because they can get the special skills they need to then get a job. But meanwhile, they have all those loans and all the debt. And so there's got to be a better way to do this. This is why I propose 1- and 2-year degrees free. That is what Barack Obama wanted to do to begin with. Fastest rising types of jobs need those kinds of degrees. It is everything from the fact that we're going to have 78,000 openings for electricians. We're going to have nearly the same for plumbers. We have 1 million job openings in the next 10 years for home health care workers. We have tons of openings for nurses, people working in our hospitals. So not every path to success is the same, but there is no success if you don't respect the dignity of work. And that means making sure that when people do have those jobs, that they're able to access child care and get a decent retirement and things like that. That's where I think we should put the focus on, in addition to doubling the Pell Grants that are now at $6,000 a year up to $12,000 a year for those 4-year degrees, and then making sure that we make it easier for students to pay back their loans. And I would not propose giving free loan payment and free college to everyone, because that would mean you were literally financing wealthy kids to go to college. That is a true fact. And I think it's something like 10% of kids at state colleges right now come from families making over $200,000 a year. So that's why I am not on that bumper sticker plan. And I think there's a much smarter way we can do this, but we have to be committed. And you heard my own story about my dad. I'd add to that my sister. She didn't graduate from high school. She went into manufacturing for a couple of years, and she finally got the confidence to get her GED. She then got a 2-year community college degree, and years later got a 4-year degree in accounting. Again, there are many paths to success, and we've got to figure out how to, and she's been gainfully employed ever since, how to connect those paths and the education and the funding of that education, including, of course, strong funding for K through 12, given I'm the daughter of a teacher, and our advanced education as well. Another piece of this is immigration reform. That matters for the whole country. I hate the way Donald Trump talks about it all the time. He only sees it as a negative, whereas most of the people in this country, with the exception of our Native American community, stand on the shoulders of immigrants. 70 of our Fortune 500 companies are headed up by people from other countries. 25% of our U.S. Nobel laureates were born in other countries. We need workers right now in our fields and in our factories. We need them very significantly in our rural areas and in hospitals and in nursing homes. And yet this president has tried to deport people who are actually legally here, like temporary status people. Like people who have been here for decades. And the way I look at it, immigrants don't diminish America, they are America. And that is why I'm a strong supporter of comprehensive immigration reform. Other challenges, healthcare. We've had a few debates about that. You haven't noticed, so I'm not going to dwell on it. I think the best thing is a public option because that allows competition and a nonprofit option that would compete with the current insurance system and bring those prices down. That was what we wanted to do with the Affordable Care Act, but we were stopped. And I think there's a lot more support right now for the Affordable Care Act, as you know, around the country, as we saw in places like Kentucky, than there was back then. I mean, the Affordable Care Act is now more popular than Donald Trump in the polls. No, it really is. So I don't know why we would want to demolish it. I think what we should do is build on it, build on the protections not only with a public option, but also with going after pharmaceutical prices in a big way. This is nearly 20% of our healthcare costs when you include hospital pharmaceuticals. And this is something I've been leading on since the day I got to the Senate. Bernie and I did an amendment together, which was focused on bringing down the cost of pharmaceuticals by allowing for less expensive drugs to come in from other countries. Since in Minnesota, I can see Canada from my porch, and I see those prices firsthand. I now have a bipartisan bill on that very thing. We got 14 votes for the Klobuchar-Sanders bill on an amendment vote. So we are going to be able to get this done when I am president. Also unleashing 43 million seniors to negotiate better prices right now. And sometimes that issue gets confusing. It's really not. In law, the pharma companies got in place a prohibition on trying to bargain for better prices. It says you can't under Medicare. You can for the VA, and you can for Medicaid, but you can't for Medicare. And this doesn't just hurt 43 million seniors, it hurts everyone, because that is such a huge healthcare user block that it would affect the prices for everyone. So that's why that's so important, as well as the bill that's in the House. Just got a price tag of how much money it would save for taxpayers. $350 billion. What that bill would do is set caps on the prices based on international numbers. The crazy part about this story is we've developed a lot of those drugs in America with taxpayer money, and now we are paying more than they are paying in other countries. So this is an area that's ripe for work. I've been a leader in this area for years, and we can get this done. Leading to, and then we can do some questions, really my major argument today, especially after last night. We need a candidate, and I believe it is me, that can bring people with us. And my track record is clear. A lot of people talk the talk during elections. I think the facts matter. I'm a former prosecutor. I like to look at evidence. The evidence is there. I'm the only one on that stage that has led a ticket through good and bad in red districts and blue districts and purple, and won every single time, every congressional district. That includes the district that borders Iowa, the district that borders North and South Dakota. That includes Michelle Bachmann's district. And like the mayor, who was able to win in an area that Donald Trump won, I have won repeatedly in these rural and suburban counties. And I do it not by selling out on my values, but by simply meeting people where they are, by listening to them and then taking their concerns. This is the last time I checked what representative democracy is about, and then getting things done. And that's how I passed over 100 bills in the gridlock of Washington, where I am the lead Democrat. And I think that matters. I think experience governing should matter at a time when we have a guy that had no experience governing, and beyond all the moral issues and the legal issues and everything else with him, had no experience governing, and we have not been able to get things done that help regular people. There's no doubt about it. Then I think it matters if you can win. If that's what you care about, look at the track records. I am the one that has done this. And not only that, when I lead a ticket, I don't just do it for myself. I have flipped the legislature every single time I've run. It goes back to Republican, then I lead the ticket, and it goes back to Democrat. Every single time, 3 times statewide. And that's because I don't just think of myself. I think of how you bring people with you. And so if you want to get all this democracy work done, which I feel so strongly about, to make it easier for people to register to vote all across this country, to finally do something about dark money in politics, we've got to win, and we don't just have to eke by a victory at 4 in the morning. We have to win big, because if we win big, then we win the Senate seats in places like Colorado, in places like Arizona. We keep Doug Jones in Alabama, places like Maine. If we win big, we send Mitch McConnell packing, and we can get all of this work done. And may I add to that list now, after last night, Kentucky. And so if we do all that, then we can get these things done that everyone shares, including things that we have differences of opinion on in our party. We can find common ground between, so we can get this done, but only if we win big. So the key to all this is yes, New Hampshire. Not always a state that anyone can take for granted, as we know from the governorship here and other things. But we have to win in the middle of the country. And I know that these are such acutely interested voters. How do I know that? 11-year-old kid named Quinn, who came up to me and introduced himself and asked me one question in Peterborough at a town hall, and he said, so this was when the Mueller thing was going on, do you think it would be better to have the testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee or the Judiciary Committee? He was 11 years old. And then he introduced his dad and said, he is one of your unique donors. I'm like, seriously? Seriously? So I think the people of New Hampshire understand that, yes, this is about New Hampshire, but it's also about New Hampshire's role in choosing this candidate to help the whole nation. And you understand that those states that we didn't win in 2016, specifically Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio, and nearly Minnesota, which was Hillary's smallest margin of victory in the entire country, and it almost fell to Donald Trump, that we need to build a blue wall around those states of Democratic votes and make Donald Trump pay for it. All right? That is our plan. And the way you do it is by putting someone that can bring them in. Now, I've not been in all these head-to-heads, but I've seen that there's trouble for some of our candidates in some of these states. And I do know there was one, a very good poll done recently in my state, and it showed the person that could win by not just 10 votes, not just 12 percentage points, but 18 percentage points, way above everyone else running, including not just women votes, because it's not women candidates, but male votes, which I've always tended to get a lot of, was me, okay? And then you look at Michigan, the one head-to-head I had there, I was up by 8 points. That was a few months ago. So I think it is really important for New Hampshire voters to think of New Hampshire first. That's your job. But also to think of the role that you play, this incredibly important role as the first primary state in picking a candidate that can not just win, but win big. So that's what we're about. All right. So let us have some. Oh, we have like a mixing bowl of questions over here. This is pretty good. Thank you. No, I'll read them. Okay, here we go. This is from. Let's see. This is from. Is it Dwayne? Is that you? Okay, there you are in the front row. Do you want to ask it yourself? It says, how will you answer the health care debates? So you mean...
You already did answer.
Okay, good. Okay, let's go to the next one. Could I add one thing, of course, because I'm a politician. But I want to add one thing on this, and that is that I think there are a lot of good ideas. I do. I just don't think anyone has a monopoly on good ideas. And it's very important this debate happen so people can make their own decision. One of those ideas out there is Medicare for all. I am the only senator on the debate stage that didn't get on that bill because I read it, and on page 8 it said that in 4 years 149 million people would have to get off their current health insurance, and I didn't think it was the right